Joining us now, retired U.S. Navy Rear Admiral Mark Montgomery, Senior Fellow for the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Good morning to you, and thank you so much for your time. How would you characterize the overall relationship between the U.S. and South Korea going into this summit?
Look, overall, there's a lot of strengths to the partnership, particularly in the security realm, where we have a combined command of, between us, several 100,000 troops in Korea maintaining a peace against North Korea. However, there are a lot of perturbations. President Trump's unhappy with Korean defense spending, with compensation for U.S. forces that are in Korea. And then there was a pretty tough trade negotiation, of which is not really complete, although there was an agreement on tariffs. There's a lot more work to be done in trade. So I would say it's a little bit discombobulated in both security and economic measures as the South Korean president visits today.
So if you do foresee any friction, what specifically might the two be disagreeing on today?
Yeah. So I think, the Koreans will attempt to make this a lot about security, about U.S. Agreements and assurances to help defend South Korea against the North Korean invasion, which is consistent with a treaty we have with them. President Trump will push back and say, hey, you're at about 2.3, 2.4% of GDP if defense spending as a percentage of gross domestic product. We're shooting for 3.5% in NATO. Even with some recalculations to be consistent with NATO, the Koreans have a lot of work to do to get to 3.5%. So I think the president's going to lean in on them on their defense spending, as well he should, so that they can get it up to 3.5% over the next couple of years. Not 2035 like Europe, but more like 2029, 2030.
Right. They've already made some significant investments, or at least promises to invest. The military, though, Mark, let's go back to that for a moment. What are some of the strategic implications of South Korea potentially expanding its military beyond the Korean Peninsula as you consider North Korea and China?
So what's important is that Korea has good relations with the United States and Japan. And on the way here, the president went to Japan to meet with Prime Minister Shiba to have a discussion. That's good. What's less appealing to President Trump is South Korea's outreach to China, where they're doing, who's their actual number one trade partner. I think the president would say, hey, we should be where your foreign direct investment is. We should be where your principal trade is, because we're your security partner of choice. We should also be your economic partner of choice. So there'll be some friction there as well. I think in general, we'll ask the South Koreans to continue to spend to hold off and defeat North Korea so that there's less pressure on the United States.
Is there a realistic path forward for renewed diplomacy with North Korea, Mark?
So I think Kim Jong-un, the leader of North Korea, would love to have the president reach out to him again so that he can go through another round of what went through in President Trump's first administration. I think President Trump probably says, I've got enough irons in the fire right now with authoritarian problems with President Putin in Russia and Xi in China. He's probably going to hold off on that. So I imagine that there's not going to be a diplomatic initiative just yet with North Korea. I think the other two problems have to be solved first.
Good point. Mark Montgomery, thank you so much for your time on this.